Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lorella Praeli, and I'm the president of Community Change Action. Mike Griffin, Dorian Warren, and I are here today because George Floyd should be alive. But he's not. George Floyd's life was brutally taken at the hands of Minneapolis police officers on May 25th in the middle of the afternoon, with onlookers pleading, begging one of the officers to remove his knee from his neck. Mr. Floyd's death has rightfully sparked outrage and anger. He could be heard gasping, "I can't breathe," in his final moments, as a Minneapolis police officer blocked his airway for almost 9 minutes. This tragedy calls to mind another cruel killing, the death of Eric Gardner by New York City police in 2014. Both men were in their 40s. Both men were fathers, sons, and beloved members of their communities.
So we say their names, we mourn their deaths, and we organize. We organize to demand justice and accountability. Now, the video capturing Mr. Floyd's killing is harrowing. And as a Black man, as an American, as a person who lives by the creed that we are all created equally, I am fed up with another needless and inhumane killing of a Black man at the hands of the police. Let's also remember it's not just Black men. It's Black women, it's Black trans folk. Breonna Taylor, sleeping while Black, 8 shots by police in Kentucky. Tony McDade, a Black trans man, shot and killed by police in Florida. The list goes on, but let's say their names. And at Community Change Action, we believe that all Black people should thrive in this country. We condemn all anti-Black racism and all acts of anti-Black state-sanctioned and white vigilante violence. We are outraged by these murders, and we commit to standing in solidarity with the Floyd family and all Black families demanding justice. So today, we are here with Community Change Action's senior electoral organizer, Mike Griffin, who has been protesting in his city of Minneapolis for the last few days. You probably have seen or heard him on national media providing a firsthand account of what's happening on the ground. And so, Mike, we want to thank you first so much for being with us. Our hearts are with you and folks in Minneapolis. And can you describe to us what the atmosphere is like and paint a picture for us of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and what you're feeling?
Yeah, so every time I leave the house, whether I'm going for a jog or walking to the store to grab some food, by the way, all the stores are closed now. So when you walk to the store to grab food, you realize that the stores are closed. So when I'm going jogging or going out of the house, we are in a constant state of overwhelming police. There is not only the Minneapolis police, there is the Hennepin County Sheriff, there are the state police, and the largest deployment of the National Guard ever. There is a constant presence of these giant military-style helicopters floating back and forth around Minneapolis repeatedly. The feeling is tense. But I've always known that protesting and organizing is the only way. Protest, organizing, and voting is the only way we bring about real change in this country. So I was out there yesterday in the streets. I'll be out there today, and I'm gonna just keep protesting and organizing in the streets. But this police state has got to end. We are spending hand over fist the majority of our money on a police state. And so whether there's a curfew at 5, 6, or 8 o'clock, or you put a police on every single corner in Minneapolis, that's not going to change the systemic problems that we're having. The reason why police officers in this city was so cavalier that they were going to choke out a man in broad daylight on camera on a holiday was because we have devalued Black lives. We have devalued Black lives to give him the thought that he can do that. So we need big structural changes to actually stop this cycle of Black men just dying, us getting distracted, and then the next Black man dying again. So I'm looking for the mayor of this city, when it's my good friend Jacob Fry, the governor, Tim Walz, to actually come out with big, bold policies that can take us from a police state to a caring state. Because the reason why people are in the streets right now is because I feel that this state don't care about me. I feel that my city don't care about me. I feel that this country does not care about Black lives. So we got to change the structure of this system. If not, we're going to keep remaining in the streets and keep protesting, Dorian. And I would like us to get to a place where I can go outside the house without chronic police officers here. And I can go outside the house and actually feel safe and secure without police threatening me. Thanks, Dorian.
Thank you, Mike. I think we have to continue to challenge ourselves and make a commitment every day to ground and center the lives of Black men and women, of Black people in this fight today. You know, I find it's very telling that mostly Black protesters who are calling for charges against the officers are being met with riot gear, with flash grenades and smoke bombs, while in states such as Michigan, mostly white armed protesters who are angry about having to quarantine and wear masks in the middle of a global pandemic can storm the Capitol without a similar response from law enforcement. So I want to ask you if you can tell us a little bit more about how police are treating Black people on the ground.
You know, we have been beating a drum of police accountability in this city and state for years. 5 or 6 years ago, Jamar Clark was killed while some people were saying he was handcuffed, right? We protested weeks and weeks and weeks, and the city wouldn't even release the body cam footage for us. His murderers weren't even charged. They weren't even a jury didn't even decide their fate. Our county attorney, Mike Freeman, didn't even charge him. A year later, Philando Castile, driving his passenger seat, his daughter in the back seat, shot, streamed live on Facebook. That officer was charged, but then found not guilty. Now, fast forward 5 years later, and we've been beating the drum beat. And they gave body cam, no significant changes. We're not talking about structural changes. We're talking about putting the body camera on a cop, and it's his decision if he wants to cut it on or not. The mayor came in, made it mandatory for them to cut on. But the police have been known to kill Black men in this city, right? And that's the large thing that the police have done. They also harass us. Every time I go to Target, every single time I go to Target, that's outside of the third precinct that did exist last week, right? A Target is across the street from them. There are police cars that sit outside of that Target, right? To threaten and harass potential people who are going in and out. Like police, we are in a city of over-policing, and that we're making a choice. That my dollar that I'm giving, because I'm paying for the police in this city. My property taxes paid for the police. We made a choice that this dollar that I had is going to go to police who can kill me, not even be charged for it, and still walk around, instead of this dollar going to childcare, instead of this dollar going to making sure everybody has a living wage, instead of this dollar going to affordable homes. Like, that's a choice that our elected officials are making. The reason that we've got to stay in the street is because our politicians are making a choice with this dollar to go to a police state and not a caring state. So the police, I feel like, are harassing us. We have a choice in this city whether or not we keep leaning into the status quo, which is spending millions of dollars on the police force. There are, for example, I don't want to go down a tangent, but the police, when they harass folks here and we sue, the police spend millions of dollars on behind the door deals to pay out Black people that they have harassed. $20 million settlement with Justine Diamond, $20 million. Imagine that money going back into reinvestment and into the community. These are choices that we're making as a city, and I'm gonna pass it back to you. But I think the police, we can reform the police department and actually go into programs that can make my life better in the state of Minnesota.
that would allow Black people to thrive. And just to this point, Mike, it's not just the city of Minneapolis or St. Paul for that matter. It's my hometown of Chicago. It's New York. It's LA. It's Detroit. It's Atlanta. Every single municipal government pays out millions of dollars in settlements for misconduct. And again, to your point, that's a dollar that's going to pay for misconduct that's not going into a caring economy where Black people can thrive. But I want to go back to something you said earlier, just because I want to get to this question of accountability around the police officers responsible for George Floyd's death. So as I think most people probably know at this point, the city of Minneapolis took steps towards accountability by firing the officers involved. And then there was, a couple of days later, an arrest and the charging of Derek Chauvin. That was the police officer who was filmed kneeling on George Floyd's neck and essentially committing public murder. He was charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. And now that case has been moved to the Attorney General, Keith Ellison. But it's worth noting we have a long road ahead. So talk to us about how we can use organizing to demand justice for George Floyd's family. How do we use organizing to demand how we build out a more caring economy, and how do we change the rules fundamentally that will change behavior? So talk to us a little bit about all of that.
That's a loaded question, but let's start with it. We need to make sure that we continue to protest and to be organizing. I'm gonna keep on being in the streets. We're gonna make sure that voters actually are voting. We have a city attorney race that's coming up in 2022. City councilors are also elected. There's a budget that the mayor comes out with in August that is voted by the city council in December of every single year. There is budgetary items that we are deciding as a community to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the police that our politicians are saying that are fine. Right. So there's the rhetoric of a couple years ago with politicians saying Black Lives Matter. Right. And now there's a rhetoric of politicians saying like they are now accepting that it's structural problems that the reason why there's so much anger. Great. Now it's time to go to the next step. Now it's time to actually go, what are the actual policies we can move that actually can make Black lives better? It is not good enough elected officials in this city and state, in fact, around the country, to just simply say Black lives matter. It's not enough to accept the fact that it's because of structural changes. You need to take the extra step. You have the power, elected officials. You actually have the power to make sure that your budget and policy reflect your rhetoric. I am done with the press conferences. I'm done with the rhetoric. It is now time for us to organize, for us to push demands, and for us to lean on our elected officials for big, bold policies that can take that dollar from the police state and to actually move it to a caring state, Dorian.
Thank you, Mike. And it feels to me like periods of turmoil and change create openings to reimagine the rules, just like we heard Dorian say, and to really advance new solutions and new futures. Like, how do we create new futures in this moment that really foreground equity in these areas of our lives, right? How do we take this moment to both elect the people that can adequately represent us, but also use this moment to demand and bring about real policy and structural change, but continue to understand that none of this is enough if we don't continue to build the kind of power and move people let people be in their anger and eventually travel with them from a state of anger into a state of action, right? And that's what we're seeing on the ground right now. So my question to you is, when I see footage of the protesters, it appears to me that it's a real moment of solidarity and a real show of multiracial solidarity in this moment. Are you seeing that on the ground right now? Is this a time when protesters of different races and nationalities are coming together to demand for that kind of bold and structural change and real accountability? Is that what you're seeing on the ground?
Yeah, I'm seeing that in full fold on the ground. So one, these Black Lives Matter protesters are like, I'm just going, right? I'm attending. I might lead some chants, which is why my voice go low, but they're being organized and led by young people who are much better organized than I ever was. They have got the social media game. They're savvy. They're in the streets. They're more hungry, and they're even better than I was back in 2008 when I started with Obama. The next generation are big. So that does give me hope. And they're diverse. These crowds at these Black Lives Matter protests are diverse, folks. There's some people that stand out, but a lot of the people who are there for Black Lives Matter are definitely diverse. I like to look at this moment, Lorella, as our 1968 moment. There was a moment in 1968 where we decided as a country, we were going to do big, bold things, right? RFK was killed. Dr. King was killed. There was anger in the streets, right? There was real anger in the streets. And we made a choice as a nation together, black, white, brown, together, and said, we're going to actually pass the civil rights. We're going to pass the voting rights. We're actually going to do big structural changes in this country to make Black Lives Matter. This is that moment. But the only way we get there, I don't know another way to get there other than us to remain protesting. In the 1968, after King was killed, we didn't stop protesting and go home. No, we remained in the streets, right? We got to remain organizing. I'm encouraging everyone that at these Black Lives Matter protests to come with a clipboard. I go all the time with a clipboard. Write down the name, meet a friend, talk to you, meet a friend, talk to that person, because ultimately our power is going to rest on the ballot, right? Ultimately, when we hold elected officials accountable is on the ballot. So I would like to try to use this movement, right, to take this 1968 moment and for us to be able to move from a police state to a caring state, and that we're actually able to make sure that my life in this state and that Black lives around the country actually matter.
Well, Mike, that was, as always, a powerful note to end us off with. And it really does speak to the work that lies ahead in our communities, particularly in Black communities, around how do we change the rules and reconstruct our communities that allow every Black person to thrive. So I want to thank you again for sharing your experiences with us. Thank you for demanding change from the Minneapolis Police Department. Thank you for demanding change and real bold structural change in your home of the Twin Cities. And with that, just to let all of you watching know, Community Change Action has started a petition with 3 key demands: that the DA arrests and charges all 4 of the officers involved, that community-based oversights are established to investigate George Floyd's death, and that the Minneapolis Police Department and that there is peaceful protection, not violence, but protection for peaceful protesters exercising their First Amendment rights. You can see the caption below for the link to sign on and demand justice for the family of George Floyd, or just text the word freedom, 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 to 40649. Lorella?
Thank you, Dorian. And thank you, Mike. I want to make sure that everyone knows that we're standing with you and we're standing with people who are speaking truth to power in this moment. I want to ground us in the words of Stephen Jackson, who's George Floyd's lifelong friend. He wrote the following message on Instagram just after midnight on Sunday. He said, quote, "We will get justice. We will get new policies. We will get to the polls and vote." And so Community Change Action and our family will continue its electoral work to get that kind of accountability and justice and to answer his call to action. We will continue to say that Black lives matter and make a commitment to learn, to challenge our communities, and to fight racism. That it's not enough to have a hashtag, that it's not enough to say what we stand for, but we've got to put something on the line ourselves. And that's the call to everyone who's tuned in and is watching this live right now. Everyone who is tuned in has 5 people in their lives they could text or contact right now and remind them all that is on the line. So it's not enough for us to just say what we stand for. We've got to put something in the lines. The question for you is, what does that mean for you, for your family, for your networks, for your friends? So we're going to hold space for the families of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, And for all Black families who are grieving their loved ones, we will also continue to build power from the ground up. And we commend those uniting their voices all over the world in this moment to do the same. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back with more.
Thank you.
Thank you.